FDA says synthetic nicotine may be more potent than nicotine itself. The agency is responding to the rise of products like vapes, Zyn pouches, and snus that use nicotine-like chemicals to create a similar high. Join us now with more on the risks and regulations surrounding these products. Scott Gottlieb is the former commissioner of the FDA. He's now a CNBC contributor and a board member of Illumina and Pfizer. How prevalent are these things, Doctor? I haven't even heard of a couple of those things.
Yeah, well, not prevalent yet. So we're talking about synthetic analogs of nicotine. So this isn't actually nicotine. It's what's called 6-methyl-nicotine. It's making its way into a handful of products that are coming into the market, being used, unfortunately, largely by youth. A lot of the products that you mentioned at the top of the show are actually using either nicotine derived from tobacco or synthetically derived nicotine. Now, nicotine derived from tobacco or nicotine that's synthetically derived are both regulated by FDA. The law that gives FDA jurisdiction over tobacco products encompasses either nicotine derived from tobacco leaves or that's chemically synthesized. What these are analogs of nicotine that aren't quite nicotine, but they hit the nicotine receptor in a similar way, perhaps in a more potent way. So they skirt around FDA regulation, since the FDA regulation is very specific to nicotine, because they're not actually nicotine. Right now, they're not subject to FDA regulation. And just one last point, I faced a similar issue like this when I was at FDA as commissioner, in that the law at that time only covered nicotine that was derived from tobacco leaves, so only gave FDA jurisdiction over nicotine derived from tobacco leaves, because at the time they wrote the law, they didn't envision that it'd be possible to synthetically synthesize nicotine. Subsequent to that, when I got to the agency, we started to see synthetic nicotine products coming onto the market. We went to Congress and asked them for more authority to give us jurisdiction over those products. They did. I suspect that's what's going to happen here. Congress is going to expand the law to give the agency jurisdiction, not just over nicotine, but nicotine analogs.
How advantageous is it to be able to skirt the regulations that we have right now for nicotine, Doctor? Because it seems like a pretty simple fix. I mean, it involves Congress, but it seems like you could, make synthetic analogs, have producers of those live by the same rules as the ones that produce real nicotine.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a big reason to try to skirt FDA regulations, since the FDA isn't actively regulating in this space, right. And so far as it has a backlog of about 500,000 applications that it needs to work through. So it's allowing these products onto the market in the interim while it works those applications. It has been taking enforcement actions. I think by trying to skirt FDA regulations by synthesizing a new component, they actually probably put themselves into the crosshairs of FDA's drug regulation. So they might have jumped out of the frying pan of tobacco regulation, but into the fire of drug regulation. And I would expect to see FDA try to take some action to say that these are illegal under the new drug regulations, because nicotine, as you know, is also regulated as a drug, and they are making claims about hitting that same receptor. So they are making drug-like claims. I do think that there's an argument that FDA can craft here to say that they're running afoul of the drug regulation. And that would give the agency authority to direct Customs and Border Protection to seize these products at the border. They're coming in largely through the mail. It looks like a lot of these chemicals are being made in China. There's 4 companies in China that have patents in China to this synthetically derived nicotine, this 6-methyl-nicotine.
Figures. All right, I'm bored talking about nicotine. Can you tell me about, is there going to be there's not another pandemic staring us in the face, is there?
Look, I don't think so. This strain so far doesn't look like it has the capacity to spread efficiently with humans. I think what we don't know is how many people have been infected and recovered. So it'd be better to have surveillance data on those dairy farms to get a better handle on how many people actually have been infected, had mild illnesses, recovered. That would be very important public health data to have. I also worry about the fact that we haven't been very aggressive at trying to control the spread on these farms. The more that this continues to spread in cows, and if this does have the potential to become an endemic virus in cows, that would be an unfortunate situation, because the more that we allow this to spread in mammals, the more that we tempt fate that this eventually can jump into humans, and that's what you worry about.
What's the solution? To cull the cattle?
No, but there's precautions you could take on dairy farms. It appears that the virus is spreading through milking equipment, that it localizes in the udders on the cows. So it's actually spreading through the milking equipment. So you could take measures to try to sanitize equipment in between milking. I don't know on-farm procedures, but there are things I'm told you can do. It might add to some cost on the farms. You could also offer vaccination to some of the dairy workers since they're exposed to this virus, at a higher rate than certainly the general population. I think that there'd probably be low uptake, but there'd be some uptake.
Should we have any hesitancy about prescribing Ozempic for anybody that just wants to be thinner, or one of these drugs, whatever, any of the class of drugs? I'm thinking about high school girls, or that have, that we read about, that have so many issues on social media with their weight. I mean, do we just go headlong into this? They become trillion-dollar drugs. Everybody is skinny. I mean, aren't there any concerns about the mechanisms at this point, Scott? They could do incredible good, but it just seems like, I mean, I don't even think I necessarily am suitable for it the way that it works. I don't, I'm not obese quite.
I think we should be worried about inappropriate utilization of these drugs. These are high-dose drugs. They do have side effects. If you look at the average BMI of people who are on the branded version of these drugs, Novo put out some data. I believe the average BMI of someone who was prescribed Wegovy was 38, which is quite high. So it looks like they're being appropriately used, the prescription drugs at least. Where I think that there may be some inappropriate utilization is, frankly, with the compounders and the telehealth providers who are marketing direct to consumers, and I don't think the bar is very high to getting a prescription from some of those venues. So I do think there's some inappropriate or more inappropriate utilization in that segment. I think overall, though, the inappropriate utilization is probably a lot lower than we surmise, simply because we're in a media market where we probably know a handful of people who are using it more for a lifestyle type of indication. But I think overall, if you look across the country at the utilization, I think it's people who are appropriately indicated are getting these drugs. But it is something we need to be concerned about as the bar to a prescription gets lower and people get more accustomed to this.